Hey there, my friends. It's Bill MacDonald, the reading and writing doctor. Welcome to the fourth grade ER, the emergency room for extended responses. Now, whenever you're teaching students to respond to a passage, they have to understand that everything in that selection ties together as they're reading it. And so when you're teaching the concept that everything ties together, it's kind of cool to make something that's very difficult and sometimes boring a little more exciting. And so in my next couple of videos, I'm going to use a regular tie, and we can have a wear a tie to school today as we talk about how everything ties together, or a separate video that I'm going to have will be for shoes because your laces tie together. And so whether we want to make it more interesting with a tie, and everybody wears ties when we learn how to make the reading writing connection by everything tying together. So I went to a private school for several years, and they made us wear a tie every day. And so I kind of got pretty good at tying a tie. And so one little contest that you can have done is to see how long it takes your students to either A, tie a tie correctly so that everything looks great. And of course, it doesn't look great. I'm just putting it on. But you might teach them that because people who wear ties generally wear them to uh, make sure that they look good with whatever they're wearing, that this tie here would not very well match with this shirt that I have on today. And so you could talk about that whatever the student writes in terms of the topic, T, it kind of has to relate to the T, the title. And so if you think this way, I'm going to show you some glasses. These are my orangish ones, but I have some that are red where you say whatever you write regarding the topic has to connect to your idea. And so if they don't, what you could do is get some Dollar Tree glasses and cut right there in the middle with some scissors, or just break them by hand, and, and tell them that whenever you don't connect your topic T to your idea, your central idea, your controlling idea, your thesis, your claim, your opinion. If you want to get some round glasses, you can make sure that the opinion matches one or the other. So let me show you how to use that acronym BESTIES for this fourth grade. Just remember that BESTIES is going to be a friend of your students to remember some important concepts. The B was the the little bullets, the little dots, the 9 dots that they're going to see on the composition portion, the essay portion. The E of Besties was to explain. And they're going to also find somewhere on that page an E, a word essay. S was to separate, to take apart, to separate the topic into E, Z, sections. And so if this hand here is the whole passage, then that would be the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Or if this was one paragraph, then this would be the topic sentence. This would be the specific supporting sentences, and that would be the closing sentence of that paragraph. So I'm going to use a hand today to make sure your students know how to tie everything together. So ties is going to be the topic related to the title. You come up with an idea, central, controlling, or thesis that's based on evidence in a complete sentence. So before we do that, let's make sure I want to review that one more time on besties. Look for the bullets, look for the word explain and essay, and then separate the topic into easier sections. And so you want to make sure that you can break the topic apart into sections that are manageable for those kids who struggle with reading. So here we have the fourth grade uh, prompt/topic. It was one selection only. It started by asking your students to read the article called Austin's Secret Salamander. Now that means that the focus is not Austin, but it's the salamander who lives somewhere in Austin. But Austin is going to be important as part of your student's response because of the people and the animals, the agriculture that lives in Austin. So here's the prompt. And just for those of you who haven't seen the previous videos, the English prompt got a response of 168,657 zeros. A whopping 46% got 2 zeros from both readers in organization and development. That means a total of 4 zeros. And a big portion was the students not understanding the prompt. So here's me breaking the topic apart into easier sections. There's the explain. The essay would be written somewhere, or composition. The why is the student's idea. The Edwards Aquifer, 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 I believe it is important in this article. Okay, the article based on this. So what they needed was the central idea. The cause and effect was the cause was the Edwards Aquifer, and they needed an open-ended effect. How it related to the article called The Salamanders in Austin. So not only were there 46% zeros, but the average score was out of 5 points. Each reader gave only 1 3600ths of a point on the state average out of a possible 5. That means that it was closer to getting a 1 from each reader on development and organization and a 0 on conventions because of the grammar. Because if you give the paper a 0 on conventions, then sorry, a 0 on development organization, as many of you and most of you are hopefully aware by now, you automatically got the 0 on conventions if you did not respond in some way to this prompt. So on this one, I have an alphabet here. And so I said, we're going to use the acronym TIES like I did. And so I'm going to pull off this T. Look for the I. There's the I there. There's the E. And there's the S. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just set aside all of the other ones without making a big mess, hopefully. Put it over here to the side. Okay. So there's a hand that I wanted to show you. Uh, let me take a look. Here's the acronym TIES, that everything ties together. And I want you to notice that in my revising graphic organizer, where you're reading to respond with revising or with reading, and in this case, an essay, everything ties together. And the most important T is the topic, also known as the prompt. What are they asking us here? Author's purpose. The I would be the idea. I need to respond to the topic with an idea based on evidence in a complete sentence. And so when you see me place the T, then the I, the E, and the S, when I flip that over, let me see what I put on T. The topic happened to do with Edwards Aquifer. Now, I noticed that it was Edwards plural. Edwards must have been uh, the name of the person, not Edward. So it's technically plural, but I had already written on the puzzle piece. And so we're breaking apart the pieces of the prompt so that we can understand how to analyze the pieces of the essay, of the passage, of the selection. The I was the idea. Why was it important? The E was the evidence. I have to make sure it's based on evidence. So you can't just tell me the Edwards aquifer is important. You have to base it something to do with evidence, and I'll show you a little bit of that. And the S was I've got to come up with an idea in a sentence, or what we called a controlling idea statement, a central idea statement, or a thesis statement. So I want you to notice that I put some numbers inside the fingernails of my graphic organizer. And so when I give these sets of organizers to teachers, there's a class of 25, and the students uh, will have them laminated so that we can cover multiple topics of reading, revising, and in this case, an essay. So on the test, I can't use this graphic organizer. First of all, because it's not blank. And a lot of students who are not having special needs or labeled with a certain disability won't be able to use it. But I want you to notice that it did say very specifically an aquifer is a layer of rock with holes going through it. And I should probably fix my spelling there. So good thing about typing is if the student notices it. So what they're asking for is why was the layer of rock with holes going through it inside the water, the Edwards aquifer, important to this article? Okay, so there's my ties, and so Edwards plural aquifer is the name of the article. That they're going to give your students a topic. Okay, a topic. If you look at me over there on the side, and so the title in this case is Austin's Secret Salamander. And so your students had to figure out how does the aquifer, the topic of the question, who, what, when, where, why, which, how, whether, relate so that I can connect the topic with an idea or a thesis based on evidence in a complete sentence. Okay. So as I looked through the paragraphs, paragraph 7 had some evidence. The Austin blind salamander lives there in the Edwards aquifer. So that's great, but what is the purpose of the salamander related to the aquifer? Well, in paragraph 10, another detail that gets mentioned, the environment depends on animals, the salamander to be balanced and healthy. So it's important that the salamander is balanced and healthy. Why? Because the aquifer takes care of the water for humans, and the salamander kind of helps keep the water clean. It mentions inside this selection. The Edwards Aquifer in paragraph 10 is drinking water for 2 million people. And the Edwards Aquifer provides water for, for agriculture. And so your students could use any of these to make a central idea statement. The and so if you focus on the pieces of the puzzle, then you can say the Edwards aquifer is important to the article because, and then you would pick one of these ideas because the salamander lives there and helps keep the water clean, period. Then you could use the E evidence. You can see here. You can pick one or two or three. You just need examples. One, two, three. Just some pieces of evidence that you can use to explain. But we're not trying to get to two land, three land, or four land. We're just trying to make sure that your kids can take the pieces that are there and be able to use at least one piece of evidence to be able to come up with a sentence as the foundation. And so these were all listed, and there was another paragraph that talked about how the salamander and the aquifer related to each other in terms of predators and preys, and what would happen if the salamander left uh, the aquifer. The water would not be able to be as clean because there were the prey of the salamander, the other things that were there in the aquifer, in the water, and in the rocks that we talked about here inside the layers of rocks that had holes in it, so sort of like filters. And so it seems that the salamander was able to keep the filters uh, kind of clean, kind of like an air filter you would have on a car. And so um, we'll worry about trying to get fancy later on, but we're just trying to make sure, do I have enough? The Edwards aquifer is important to the article because, and then your students would hopefully be able to pick something here that's actual evidence and then be able to try and use that uh, to explain to be able to get to two land and three land in organization and development. So there's how we can use a tie or ties to make sure that we use an acronym to kind of have enough to make a central idea statement. I hope that that helped you kind of see uh, how one way on how to help your students. Feel free to email me in the corner email address if you have any questions. Uh, I know sometimes we have more questions than answers, and I do want to say that every time I share something, it's always a way. It's not the way. I don't think there's any one way. We should always remember that some students need a different approach. And we call that typically differentiating our instruction. So whatever we were using this past year in terms of all of the approaches to the process of teaching and modeling the extended constructor responses, apparently we needed something different, something to supplement. And so you're going to see dozens and perhaps hundreds of ways where I can help you help your students by the time, this little series is said and done. So I hope that you enjoyed that. Uh, take the ideas that you like. I remember one time I went to a training for 5 days and they read to us from PowerPoints and binders for 5 days. And it was boring, but I got one thing that I was able to take from there. And I use that one idea to this day. And I won't name the program to protect the guilty, but it was that whenever you see a good idea, like hopefully your students will be able to take something from that hand that I showed you, because if I can come up with a central idea, watch me touching my hand here. If this is the center of my hand, then everything I write from the introduction, the introducing of the idea, the evidence and the way I explain it and explode it, and the ending, the central idea, everything is connected. But if I touch just my thumb, just the beginning, and then I wiggle my hands, I cannot feel them moving. That means it would be only that section or that paragraph or that scene or that part that uh, whatever part of we can the stanza, the scene, the section, that selection if there's more than one. So it's real important that we help our students. And so what I was going to say was that one training that I went to, they had an idea that said when you help the student find their best idea, even if it was one sentence. Don't throw away the whole essay. Don't throw away a whole paragraph. Find that one little thing and make a little box run and say, that's your best idea. I box it in. Now you explode it. But before you can explode something, you want to be able to explain it. Before you can explain something, you have to have an example. And in this case, evidence. And so something that I often say is in order to get to 2 and 3 land, each evidence example explained and exploded. And so that's the one idea. And so, like I said, take the ideas that work for you and adopt them, make them your own, tweak them, and throw away the ones that don't. So God bless. Please feel free to share or tag your fourth grade teacher friends. Now, I'm gonna do a different strategy for each grade level so you can see multiple techniques and strategies to help the kids. So um, even though this one was specifically for fourth grade, you can use the tie, you can use the hand method, the puzzle with letters, the puzzles that you've seen so far. I just bought them from Dollar Tree, and it's just breaking the pieces of a prompt apart so that you can put them back together to make a clear central idea statement. Goodbye and God bless.